Okay, so this video is going to confirm yet again that the Jubilee year will begin from September the 24th, 2019 as the Day of Atonement on the Overcomer calendar as the year of Jubilee, which is pretty amazing. So this is the dual Passover night timeline, simplified version. There are two Passovers that go on in the Gospels that's been kept hidden for I don't know, decades, and only just been revealed since these blood moons began and these total solar eclipses, in order to be able to help reveal this great mystery as these lunar and solar eclipses have happened. So we've actually lived through the Passion of the Christ timeline since really the first blood moon in April 2014, which initiated Passover night on the night of his betrayal. And this was Passover night only in the three synoptic Gospels. And it isn't Passover in the Gospel of John. And yet Jesus is still betrayed in this same night as the other three Gospels. But it isn't Passover night in the Gospel of John. We find out in the morning that this is the day when they are to have the Passover in the Gospel of John, chapter 18. As they didn't want to enter into the Gentile area of Pontius Pilate, lest they be defiled, as they wanted to eat the Passover later on. So this is the Passover night in the Gospel of John when Jesus is taken down off the cross and put into the tomb, a full 24 hours later than the first Passover night. The reason for this is to give rise for there being two signs of Jonah's. The first sign of Jonah is from the 14th day to the 17th day, and the second sign of Jonah goes from the 15th day all the way through to the 18th day. So in total, there have been two signs of Jonah's that have lasted 5 years. The first one lasted 3.5 years, and the second one is overlapped with the first one, and this one extends the timeline for another 2 years, so that the second sign of Jonah ends here, whereas the first one ended here. So we've been given 2 extra years, and this is quite amazing because this shows us that our Exodus happens in the morning as well as it being in the night, which is exactly what happened in the first Exodus. They were commanded that they couldn't leave their homes until morning, and yet we know that they left in haste in the night, for their dough was still unleavened. So looking at this parallel then of what happened 2 years ago, we can see that the 9th hour of the daytime initiated with a partial lunar eclipse. It's the same principle here, that the 9th hour, even though it's not the night anymore, it's the morning, it's still the 9th hour because there are only 9 hours of Passover night, so this would be the 9th hour, and yet it's the morning, which is the mystery that we have in the first Exodus, that they were able to leave in the morning, and yet it must have been night at the same time. So, this is obviously a parallel with this one, that they're both partial lunar eclipses to initiate the 9th hour. 1 month later, about the 9th hour, so it's still within the 9th hour because every hour on this timeline lasts 2 months in our day to day. So every night and day watch, okay, you can see there's 3 hours between them, but it's 6 months in our time. So for 1 hour is 2 months. Okay, so it's literally like 1 minute on this timeline is 1 day in our day to day. So to get to the next full moon as 1 month, it's actually 30 minutes. It's half an hour. So we're still within the 9th hour because the 9th hour goes from 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. So it's about the 9th hour, meaning it's halfway into the 9th hour, as well as this is halfway into the 9th hour. Okay, 1 month later, halfway into the 9th hour. Now, this on the calendar, on the Overcomer calendar, is the new moon day of the 6th month. Okay, on the Overcomer calendar, the new moon day of the 6th month, because this is a full moon and the Overcomer calendar uses the full moon as the new moon. This partial lunar eclipse is the new moon of the 5th month. Okay, the new moon day of the 5th month. It's exactly the same on the calendar 2 years later. That is the new moon day of the 5th month, 17th of July, and the new moon day of the 6th month is the 15th of August. Okay, so what do you get 40 days after the new moon day of the 6th month? You get to the Day of Atonement, which is exactly what you get here. Add 40 days, takes you to the Day of Atonement, which is the 24th of September 2019. Now, why is this so significant? Because there's so many parallels, it's unbelievable. We know that obviously the Israelites were supposed to go into the promised land after only 40 days, okay, because that's when the spies spied out the land for 40 days. But when the spies came back, only Joshua and Caleb gave a good report. The other 10 spies didn't. And so, of course, consequently, for every day that the spies were in the land for, the Israelites had to spend 1 year in the wilderness. So consequently, they were in the wilderness for another 40 years. But God's plan and will was that after 40 days, they would enter into the promised land. And this is what we have really showing us on this timeline, is that when Jesus was raised, he remained on earth for 40 days. And he lifted up his hands and blessed the people. And that's when he was ascended. Now, Jesus lifting up his hands and blessing the people is what a high priest would do after making atonement. Okay, Jesus makes atonement here. All right, so in Leviticus chapter 8 and 9, you can read about Aaron and the priests going through a 7-day purification process, and then on the 8th day, Aaron makes atonement and he lifts up his hands and blesses the people, and the glory of the Lord appears to everyone. And they fall down on the ground and shout for joy. Now, what's amazing is that this is a 40-day time period after the sign of Jonah. So this is obviously, Jesus was in the ground 3 days, 3 nights, and then he remained on earth for 40 days. It's the same principle when Jesus was baptized in water. He was baptized, which is obviously the sign of Jonah, which is our baptism in Christ, with us being buried with Christ and being raised in him. That's our baptism. With the spiritual circumcision performed by Christ, with the removal of our sinful nature and us being born again into new life in him. Now, after Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan, okay, he entered into the wilderness for 40 days. Then he was tested by the devil, and he came out empowered by the Holy Spirit. Now, what did Jesus do after those 40 days is seen here in Luke chapter 4. After 40 days, he comes out, and then he goes to Nazareth, and he goes into the synagogue, and they hand him the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. And he goes to Isaiah 61. And he reads, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to be hope for the poor, freedom for the brokenhearted, and new eyes for the blind, and to preach to prisoners, you are set free." And he says here, "I have come to share the message of Jubilee." For the time of God's great acceptance has begun. After 40 days from the baptism, Jesus makes a proclamation of the Jubilee. When is the Jubilee to be proclaimed? On the Day of Atonement. This is when the year of the Jubilee is proclaimed, is on, let me just go back so we can see verse 8. That they're to count 7 Sabbaths of years, which is 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbaths of years amount to 49 years. Then they are to sound the trumpet far and wide. On the 10th day of the 7th month, on the day of atonement, you shall sound it throughout your land. And you are to consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty in the land for all its inhabitants. It shall be your jubilee, when each of you is to return to his property and to his clan. What Jesus was doing was he was proclaiming the jubilee on the day of atonement, after 40 days of being tested in the wilderness. After 40 days here, which is paralleled over with the resurrection and the ascension here, we have Day of Atonement being the 24th of September 2019. And it's after 49 months. 7 times 7. It's after 49 months of when the Jubilee year was predominantly supposed to have begun back in 2015. 49 months later, we've got the 24th of September. But what's amazing is that we have Jesus making the proclamation of the Jubilee after a 40-day time period. This is pretty powerful. And not just that, on this timeline, it shows that, as obviously this 40-day time period takes us to the Day of Atonement. Day of Atonement on the Overcomer calendar is here, the 10th day of the 7th month. We also have Jesus walking on the water, and they're out about 3 to 4 miles. So midway between 3 to 4 miles is 3.5 miles. This is where they are. This is when Jesus gets into the boat. It's absolutely timed. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the principle. Jesus begins to walk out as of the 4th night watch. This isn't the 4th night watch because there isn't a 4th night watch. It's the 4th day. Jesus walks out. You know, it takes about, on average, a person walking 3 to 4 miles takes them between an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. This is parallel. This just shows us that the Day of Atonement is the midpoint, 3.5 miles. And isn't it amazing that Jesus even makes mention of Elijah locking up the heavens for 3.5 years? There's a midpoint, and the midpoint is revealed in this timeline. It's so powerfully accurate. The 24th of September is the Day of Atonement. Not just the Day of Atonement, it's going to be the proclamation where we're going to hear the trumpet be sounded for the year of Jubilee. We're going to have liberty, which is the removal of our sinful nature. There is a process that goes on. The sign of Jonah, 40 days, then the year of Jubilee. And this begins as of the 24th of September. And because there isn't a 13th month added, let me go to that chart quickly. Because there isn't a 13th month added in 2019, it means that the 13th month will be added in 2020, which means that the year of Jubilee is actually going to last 13 months. So how amazing is that? That God's given us a year of Jubilee, but he's given us the longest version we could ever have, which is an extra 13th month. He saved the extra month to next year to give us 13 months for the year of Jubilee. This is God's grace. The 24th of September is the day. God bless you. Have a great day.